Hey TJ, how you doing today?
I am doing fantastic.
Me too. So we're like, what is it?
I think it's March 15th today.
March 15th
Yeah.
today. So, and we're just starting this podcast and we're going to talk a little bit. I know we're going to talk a little bit about falling off the wagon today and failure and why people tend to fail. And I think this is perfect timing because most people, their New Year's resolutions are now like so far in their memory.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And so I think this is really an opportune time to talk about failure and help people sort of, how do you get back on the wagon? Why do we fail? And then, how do you get back on? So,
Right, exactly. Yeah, I know. Usually it's that 3-4 months time period. Everybody's, I stopped going to the gym. I stopped eating my salad or whatever it is, and I think it's definitely good to talk about it, even if it's amongst friends, obviously
Right.
went to school together and everything. So that's great. So let's start us off. So failure by definition, we all know what it is. It's not meeting your expectations, and maybe that's not necessarily a goal you have in mind or just not living up to that goal. So we all kind of have an idea of what that would be, right? As failure. And then what is your definition? Can you recall a time that you did fail at something that you have desired personally?
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of it's funny when you ask the question, like nothing immediately pops to mind, but I know that you've told me a little bit before about your journey, but I didn't know as much as, what you had sort of told me in the past. So like, I didn't know like you had wanted to be a fitness model at one point?
Yeah, something like that. I think it's kind of drives off that, but I think it's with the social media is so bad today.
Right.
You go on Instagram, like, oh my gosh, how does that guy have 8-packs? I have a 0-pack or a keg or whatever the case is, and you want to live up to those standards and know you necessarily can't. So I think that's a huge thing.
So TJ and I went to school together, a personal training school. And so I noticed that it was during that time when we were in school and I started seeing a lot more of like the super fit Instagrammers and the women on Facebook who are running fitness businesses.
Right,
and I really started comparing myself to those women. And I started to struggle within myself because I basically failed at the same thing. And I think it's a really common story for people to fail at the weight loss thing. But I had this idea that the super lean 6-pack abs was what I wanted, and that my life would somehow be a lot better and that clients would just flock to me if I had that, And I actually had that body for like a split second. I think I made it down to about 16% body fat, which for a woman is really low.
Yeah, that's really good, yeah.
And I found that it didn't make me happy. My life was not better. In fact, I think my life was worse. And I was really, really unhealthy. But, I was just really stuck in this cycle of bad, basically self-talk. And it just kept me in that trying and trying and trying. And I really did try hard, but at some point I gave up, and I guess you could call it a failure. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I do think that I began to realize that the goal that I had initially set was just not something that was going to work for me. I don't know. What was your experience?
So my experience kind of the same, but not really. I never even hit that goal ever, except maybe when I was in high school and I didn't know anything about fitness. You're under 18, you're lean, you're mean, and you can just get away with eating like a Swiss roll package, the whole box, the box. Yeah, it's more the box.
Right.
And then when you get a little older, your metabolism slows down, stuff like that, and then you're like, okay, hey, I'm just going to go to the gym 30 minutes a day, maybe do a little bit of cardio. I'm going to have that body back. And you're looking in the mirror like, hey, where are you going? You're not going anywhere. What are you doing? So, and I think that's, I think that as we get older, our bodies obviously change, and we just got to figure out as to what really works for us as far as, health and what really that would be. And I know, a lot of stuff happened in my life. I lost my job. And there's a backstory to that. And then you picked me up to go to school every day, and I was eating like a large pizza because I wanted a large pizza. It's probably other things like depression and stuff like that.
I was going to say, I mean, do you think that like had an emotional component?
Yeah, I would say so.
Right.
Oh yeah. Because it's like I was applying for so many jobs. I wasn't getting any jobs. I was overqualified for a bowling alley, which makes no sense.
Oh my God.
And it's just like, you know what? I don't care. I have a credit card. I'm gonna order pizza every day of the week, and I'm gonna eat it, and I'm going to love it. So, and I think that's a lot of people's issue is they either there's a life event that happens, or either the weight's not coming off and they're just like, screw it, I don't want to do this anymore.
It's all or nothing. Yeah. I mean, we live in that culture. We want results. We want them yesterday. And yeah, it's such a struggle to get out of that mindset of I have to have it now, and then trying to change your whole life. And it is such a struggle. So I mean, what else have you maybe failed at that? Because I know that I think you told me that you didn't complete college.
Yeah.
Did you start college? How long did you do that?
So I did I did post-secondary. I did a couple years, I think maybe 2 years. It was more of a lack of direction as to what I wanted to do. So I know I wanted to help people. I know I wanted to do something. Usually everybody tells you got to go to college, you got to make the money. That's the only way to do it. And obviously with today, you see people that are $100,000 in debt because they have some degree that doesn't make any sense. So that was, my thinking back then is I have to go to college. I have to get a good job. And, when it's undirected as to where exactly you want to go, I think that's the hardest thing. I know I went for nursing school, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to waste 4 years, have to wait another 6 months to get even accepted into the program, and then another year for that. It's like 6 years you're waiting to get in.
Right.
And so then I did I think I mentioned to you, I did, what was it called? A ministry. I did ministry for a while. I did that, and then I did personal training as well, like where we met at school and stuff. And then that failure of college, I maybe look at it now as not as bad of a choice maybe, but at that time it was just like, what do I do? I have no idea what I'm doing. Where do I go at this point?
I wonder sometimes, like, you say that you failed at going to college, but the stories that you probably learned when you were younger, and the things that that you grew up sort of knowing, like your parents instill certain values in you. And right. I know where in my house, college was the same thing. You have to go to college. And honestly, my parents didn't really care what I went for. They cared that I got the piece of paper.
Right.
And they said, you have to go to college because, this is how it is. This is how you get a good job. And I think in their time, like when they went to college, I think that was true. But yeah. I think suddenly that wasn't true. And now we have these stories that we run over and over in our mind, like, I will never be successful if I don't go to college.
Right.
And so you've got all these kids out there who are saying that over and over to themselves, I'm not going to be successful unless I go to college. And the statistics are showing that going to college does not necessarily mean success. And a lot of people are much more successul going to the trade schools, yeah. Or, if you have great ideas, trying to start a business, I think and like you said, with the debt, people come out of school with crazy amounts of debt. And I was fortunate that I didn't, but I think my life is a case in counterpoint to this. As far as like, I don't feel like I did complete college, but right. I don't feel like the fact that somebody else didn't complete college is a failure. I don't see that as a failure because I have a $100,000 Bachelor of Science degree in environmental studies from a private university. And I think I was in the field for 3 years, and then, sorry, mom and dad, because they paid for most of it. I got the piece of paper, but it didn't really get me anywhere. And I wasn't happy, in the field that I had chosen. It wasn't what I expected. And then you have somebody like my husband who never even considered going to college, and he's running a business that grosses over $1 million a year. So I don't think that it's necessarily all about, but again, it's the stories we tell ourselves that can really form your life.
Oh yeah. I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's crazy how you see people that just start a business with something as silly as, well, maybe not as silly as that ringer thing on that camera that's on your door outside has a video camera.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw that.
Yeah, that was on Shark Tank
right,
years ago.
Really?
Yeah, years ago. I don't think they bought it or whatever the story was, but now they're all over the place making millions of dollars over this little thing. And I don't know if the guy went to college or not, but I mean, that's not the point. The point is, if you have a great idea and you're willing to do the work to get to that point to where you can sell it or make a lot of money, I think that's really the big thing. And people are just kind of like, how it kind of comes down to how bad do you really want to succeed. College might be the way, or it might be another way. And obviously with this way we've grown up, I got stuff from my grandfather, and he's like, he went to college, he went to Navy, he developed all these things, for NASA and spacesuits and stuff, Yeah, he was really, really accomplished in that. And you're just like, so I got to go do all that just to be something, I guess, would be the word. So, yeah.
You kind of grow up a little bit in that shadow. Now, do you still feel like today not having the college education sort of stifles your ability to move forward, or?
I don't think so. I think, recently with my whole mindset switch in 2019, I think it's kind of like, if I want to go to college, I'll go back, but it's going to be kind of on my terms if I really want to go. And I have, we're doing this podcast, which I never thought I'd ever do.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
Yeah, out of my realm of talking. I talk on the phone all day, but talking about stuff that I care about is a little different. But just thinking that having set parameters may blockade what you really are supposed to do.
Right.
And I think just getting over that is huge.
Are you happy, with the life that you're living right now, or are you in the job that you're in? Right
Yeah,
now?
I mean, I like my job. I mean, what we do is great and improves people's lives and stuff like that. I mean, it's not necessarily something I thought I would do and I actually enjoy. It's more of there was a necessity because I lost my job, so I kind of stumbled into it, and I'm good at it. So I mean, it pays the bills. I have a wife and kid and all that good stuff. So I mean, it really just comes down to what you really value. And if college is that thing, great. If not,
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. I can't say that I didn't, take away some experiences from college that probably helped me in the long run.
Right.
But for the exact education I was getting, I certainly am not using that education. So.
All right. So I know everybody, we kind of went a little off topic, but we're talking about basically your life, right? So you're failing at living your best life. What does that really look like? It's going to college. It's, having a family, stuff like that. I know personally, I see my dad. If my dad yells at me for talking about him, that's perfectly fine. I can deal with it, I guess. With my dad, he's in his 60s. He's at a job that he doesn't necessarily like. He doesn't know what he wants to do, and he wants to do something, he just doesn't know. And I know that just seeing his life, and not that it's bad, seeing his emotional state, I would say, is kind of like eye-opening to just like, I don't want to be looking at my life at 65 and going like, I wasted all this time. Why didn't I just take that leap of faith or that leap of jumping off the bridge to do something that you really wanted to do from regret later on?
So what's your leap?
This is a leap.
It is.
I don't. I can talk about this stuff all day, but now it's recording.
I know, right? And then the words don't come as soon as you hit record.
Yeah.
Believe me, I know this all too well.
And not cursing.
They will. Right.
Stuff like that.
They'll come. So, but no, I mean, your story. I mean, the story. I think I think that that's a really common story also, but the story is really powerful when you see something, especially a parent who is not maybe living their best life, and it sort of helps you say, you know what, I don't want to live that way. And I agree. This podcast, I've always wanted to do a podcast,
Right.
and I was like, you called me and you said, hey, are you interested in doing a podcast? And to be honest, part of me even said, like, I heard that voice in my brain, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
You can't do this.
Yeah, I had the exact same thing. I was nervous the whole way up. I was like, okay, I just spent this money. This better work out.
Right.
I'm buying this. Oh, I'm writing a script, so
this
to
is
speak.
for real, right?
We're setting it up. Okay, I don't feel as uneasy about it. It's just kind of
Right.
that baby steps to get to that point.
Exactly.
All right, so really it comes down to, we kind of talked about, failing at, fitness, college, that's a big one, at life in general. And, we're really, this podcast is basically motivation, whether it's in all aspects of life. Now, as we kind of segue into this next part, it's kind of how do we bounce back from that, I would say, right? That's the biggest hurdle, I guess, because usually you get in a rut, you're stuck, and you don't know how to get out of that. So what do you think would be one of the first steps that we say you or I or someone that's listening would actually, start that process?
Well, for me, it always comes back to awareness. And so you have to be aware that you failed.
Right.
In the first place. And some people, they turn the other cheek, or they sweep it under the rug and they kind of forget about it. But you have to be aware. So you have to know you failed, and then you have to acknowledge the failure. I don't know. Is that your experience?
Yeah. I'll just give you kind of an example, in regards to fitness, because that's what I'll just kind of pull from, because that's the most recent. So about 2 years ago, I was at the job I am currently. I was like, I was happy, it was a job, pay the bills, yada, yada, yada. I got on the scale one day. I looked down. It was 288. I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
How did that happen? I know those Twinkies were good.
How did that
but
happen?
I'm pretty sure they were 88 pounds worth. And that's when I started, dieting. I didn't really exercise or dieted. I was down to like 250. And then recently I just started, I'm like, I'm tired of looking and feeling like crap. When I can't push a washing machine up the stairs without feeling I'm going to die, that's probably an indication that you need to do something.
Maybe.
And then it just started with acknowledging. You can tell. So there's a lot of stuff on the internet, how do you acknowledge that? How do you speak to yourself? A lot of it's self-talk. I pulled some stuff from a guy, David Goggins. I don't know if you heard of him.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, Navy SEAL. Mm-hmm. He just looked in his mirror. It's called his mirror of accountability, and we'll link something below. He looked in the mirror. He's like, "You are fat," and I'm just like looking in the mirror, like, "I am fat." That's where it started. So it's just recognizing that there is an issue, and then working towards steps to get past that issue. And really it just kind of depends on what that issue is, acknowledging it, and then getting from there.
And see, I think different approaches work for different people.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say that coming from the female perspective, and I know this is not true of all females, so don't get mad at me, but I tend to take a little bit of a softer approach, because yes, when you are struggling with something, or it's just not happening, or you could call that failure, I tend to take a softer approach to this, because when I look in the mirror, which I frequently do, and I am very mean to myself, it has never been a catalyst for healthy change in my life. Mm-hmm. So for me to stand in front of a mirror and say, "You're fat," it just doesn't work for me. Or conversely, getting on the scale, like I got rid of my scale because it doesn't help me. Maybe at one point seeing the number go down made me feel good, and that helped. But now it always seems like the number, I must be at my happy weight, because the number would just stay right where it's supposed to. But I got rid of the scale because it never gave me the number I wanted to see. And I am more likely to eat a bag of Oreos and skip my workout if I get on the scale and I'm not happy. And it seems so counterintuitive. Like, well, if you're not happy with the number, wouldn't you like go work out and like eat a salad? No.
Yeah.
Making me feel, when I feel bad, I want to eat pizza and donuts and lay on my couch.
Right.
And I think similarly, like if you criticize somebody else, what does that typically tend to do to somebody else? It makes them defensive. Mm-hmm. It doesn't catalyze change. So I have tried to use, again, that softer approach of acknowledging the fact that you are failing at something, or that something is not right, something's not going well. Maybe your goal was too big, but using that to course correct. So you can use failure to say, okay, whatever I was doing, maybe I was on the right track or maybe I wasn't, but how can I make this happen? Or how can I get back on track? And asking yourself lots of questions. So did I set unrealistic expectations? Did I try to make changes too quickly? Why did I fail? What can I do better to keep moving towards this goal that I want? Or do I need to change my goal entirely?
Yeah. It could come down to, we learned in school, it's set realistic expectations.
Right.
Usually you always ask your client, okay, you want to lose 10 pounds. How long do you think that's going to take? Oh, 2 weeks. Nah, not necessarily.
You're going to lose 9.5 pounds of water.
Yeah.
That's what you're going to lose.
Exactly. And, it's just making that attainable goal that's actually realistic. And I mean, in the fitness industry or even life in general, it's just a matter of setting that goal and the steps that follow to reach that point.
Right.
Because most people want to go from A to Z and skip everything in between.
Right. No, and I love I love talking about, health and fitness is my thing, so I love talking about that stuff. And I actually just wrote a blog post on my blog about this. I saw an ad on a pin on Pinterest that claimed you could lose 11 pounds in 2 days.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God. And so I freaked out and I was like, I've got to write a blog post about this. I did the math on whether it would be possible to lose that much fat. And see, people aren't making...
It was how many days?
2.
Oh, okay.
2.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
But most people, they would look at that claim and they would think, well, if it says it's possible, it must be possible, right?
Right.
Well, it's not physically possible. And of course, most people, when we're talking about losing weight in short amounts of time, where's the weight come from? Water. It's not the weight that you thought you're losing. It's not fat. So anyway, it turns out that you would have to eat nothing for 2 days and you would have to exercise for 70 hours on a treadmill, which blows your 48-hour time frame. Yeah. So yeah, that was the calorie math on that to actually lose 11 pounds of fat in 2 days. So yeah, I'm losing where I was going with that. But
but it's just at realistic expectations.
Yes.
Yeah, you really think you're going to lose 11 pounds, or you even see that. You see the newest one on Facebook? It's a drink. It's only on my feed for some reason. I asked my wife about it. She didn't say it.
What were you searching last?
Apparently, fatty. I don't know, drinks. I don't know. Anyways, yeah, it was like a drink, and you drink it, and it melts all your fat away. And it was like, it shows like a morbidly obese lady, and then like, I don't know the time frame, and then there's like a Instagram model. I'm like, yeah, it's not the same person.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that when you put a drink, if you drink water, it doesn't magically go to your fat cells. So it was almost like acid. That's what I would attribute it to, but it was just ridiculous.
Well, and all that stuff that's constantly being put out there, like that, or the advertisement on Pinterest I was talking about, losing 11 pounds in 2 days. All of those things, though, people see that stuff over and over and over, and I think eventually you can be brainwashed into believing that results happen that quickly.
Right.
And so definitely one of the reasons, or one of the ways to bounce back from failure, we're going to just kind of recap this. we failed. And then one of the reasons why we fail is because we have unrealistic expectations.
Right, right, yeah. So yeah, and that comes that, like you said before, accountability. So, next step, you got accountability. What's your expectations? What's your goals? What do you have in mind? And then we all know, or well, we know, maybe you don't know, what is your mindset? Okay. It's a battle of the mind. The mind has control of everything. I heard it on a podcast a while back. The brain is the general, the body is the troops, right?
Right.
If the general is fat and lazy, the body's going to be fat and lazy in regards to that. So, whether you're a positive or negative person, those thoughts will kind of dictate how you either you live your life, or how it really affects you overall, and then obviously that's going to affect your decisions and all the other stuff. So is there something either in your life, either currently or maybe past, that you had to change your mindset in order to overcome an obstacle, or whatever the case is?
Right. Yeah. If you're asking me, coming up with something right off the top of my head is hard to do, but I do have an example from a client.
Okay.
She's one of my favorite clients. She's been with me for a long time. And so I love to use her for an example because she is a horseback rider. She has a farm. She has horses. She's got the whole deal. And she routinely carries full water buckets that probably weigh at least 40 pounds each. Mm-hmm. I mean, a full water bucket's going to weigh it's going to be a lot of weight. She routinely carries these from her house to her barn because she doesn't have water run out to her barn. And it's about a quarter mile away.
Oh, wow.
So anyway, she comes to do workouts with me, and so we begin working out. And she dramatically professes to me that she would never be able to lift the 20-pound dumbbells. She's looking at these 20-pound dumbbells, and they're big and they look scary, right?
Right.
And she's telling herself, "I can't lift that." And it wasn't until I said, "Honey, you're lifting 40-pound water buckets and you're slinging 50-pound bales of hay every day. You can lift the 20s." And so after that, like when you put that in perspective, she was like, "Oh my gosh, I can do this." So it's really, and now I've got her from the 20s up to the 35, so 35-pound dumbbells. So, it's one of those things where you can limit yourself so much by that self-talk and believing what you can and can't do. So, I mean, that is so huge to, I think, changing your mindset is changing the story that you tell yourself.
Right, yeah. That's great, especially with 40 pounds and then not thinking you can live at 20 pound. That doesn't make sense. I know. But I think it's just that limitation you set on yourself. It's big, it's scary, it's 20 pounds. What does that really mean? I can't lift that.
I mean, and I always think to myself, though, I'm always trying to figure out, how is it that we change mindset? Because that really is, it's a big key. So, I mean, do you have any examples of how and I'm going to use podcasting.
Sure.
So doing a podcast or listening, I should say, to a podcast just like this one mm-hmm. can be the motivation that you need. And I will, if I need inspiration or motivation, or if I feel like I'm falling off of my fitness goals or my business goals, I start listening to podcasts, and it really helps. It's almost like you're brainwashing yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
mean, I don't know what other things can help you change mindset.
So let me just use an example recently. So, my mindset sucked because of work. And work environment is terrible. It's toxic atmosphere. Obviously it changed since then, so it's doing really well now. I was constantly worried about if I'm going to get fired, what's going to happen next week, who's getting fired next week. So to counter this mindset, and not that was the negative, where I got the negativity from, it was just that compounded with a bunch of other things.
Right.
Obviously look in the mirror, wanting to change my life, for the better. I have a sticky note above my desk and at home that says positive mindset. That's it. Doesn't say anything else. Okay. You know, and it kind of, if you know, I get a negative thought. I usually just look at that. Okay, I'm like, does this really need to be said? Do I really need to be feeling this way? No. Is it really going to matter tomorrow? No. Is that, you know, and if it affects you from the moment you have a moment you have a negative attitude, it affects your entire day.
Absolutely.
And just trying to rewire your brain to flip that switch to not go that direction is very hard, because you can look it up online. There's statistics, and Google is very helpful. You know, it's going to talk about negative routing in your brain is so much easier than the positive.
Right.
And if you just have one negative thing, it's going to go rampant and crazy, and it takes so many positive thoughts and just that positive, you know, direction to even reroute all that crap you just did.
And I think it comes back to awareness. You have to be aware of your self-talk and what you're telling yourself every day, the stories that you're telling yourself. And I love that you framed it in, you know, like you're asking yourself these questions. Like, do I really need to say that to myself? And asking, is it really true? Is what I'm telling myself, I can't lift those 20-pound dumbbells. Is that really true? Really, and asking those questions without, you know, trying not to be judgmental. And I think that's really the way to start to really dive in and figure out, you know, why you failed, and change and really change the mindset. But again, it does, especially at first. I think people struggle with the idea of changing mindset because it's not like a tangible thing that you can touch.
No, you have to work at it.
Yes.
Yeah,
And it's at first it's really hard to constantly stay on top of your thoughts. Mm-hmm. You know, it's really easy for me to walk past a mirror and think, oh, my hair's awful today. And, you know, and I have to catch myself saying those things. And even if at first you don't believe what you replace it with. So if I have that thought, oh, my hair is awful today, you know, I'm going to try and replace that. You know, if I catch myself, I'm going to say, now, wait a minute, I'm being a little hard on myself. Would I ever say that to my friend? Probably not. Right. Or my daughter, like, oh God, your hair looks terrible today. I wouldn't have very many friends for very long. So trying to find something else that, you know, even if it's not about my hair, like what can I find about my appearance that I like today, or what's going well in my life today, you know, trying to turn it around to make it a positive.
Right. So yeah, we talked about, you know, kind of recap, accountability.
Yep.
Realistic goals, and we'll kind of talk about that, like what we each do. Changing our mindset. Did I miss anything on those?
I don't think so.
Three? Okay. So, you know, we talked about all those three things. I'll kind of tell you what I've done. Kelly will kind of talk about what she's done in the past, you know, presently. So back to what my goals were. Okay. Say your goal is to work out 3 days a week. Okay, that's not necessarily what mine was. Mine was to exercise, and I went from none to the extreme, so please don't do this. So, yeah, and I went from, you know, going to bed at 11 o'clock to going to bed at like 9:30, like a grandpa. Sorry if there's grandpas listening, that's fine. And getting up at 4:30. So I get up at 4:30 every day. Not on the weekends. I let sleep in on the weekends, maybe an hour or two, so like 6:30. But during the week, 4:30, I'm up.
Do you know, though, that's one of the most cited habits among successful entrepreneurs who are making, you know, tons of money, and they have podcasts.
So I'm going to make a lot of money.
Right. They get
hopefully
up early.
Yeah, I guess. Well, that's news to me. So I guess give me your money. I'm just kidding. Obviously, I'm kidding. So I get up at 4:30. I go to the bike. Well, I actually take a picture of my watch right in the morning. So I put it on Instagram late in the day.
Oh.
And I got that from actually Navy SEAL Jocko Willenick. That's what he does.
That's like an accountability type thing?
Yeah. I don't know. He started doing it. I'm like, okay, that's good. Let's just use that. That's fine. So I do that every morning, get on the bike. And I bought this old ratchety bike, $20 on Craigslist. I get on that for 15 minutes. I do some body weight stuff. You know, eat breakfast, kind of set that cornerstone for the day. And it talks about, having that time to yourself to get things done, whether it's personal development, whether it's working out, stuff like that before anybody even gets up. Go to work, obviously, and then after work, I work out again. And that's actually at the gym with weights, not just body weight stuff. But that was my process. And, I'll be happy to say I've stuck with that for 9 weeks. That's probably the longest I've actually stuck on an exercise program, because usually I'll just do it for like a month, no results. Pizza looks good. So, and I've had a few times I weighed in and it didn't go down. Like, who cares? I look good. I feel good. I'm just going to keep doing it.
Right.
So that's kind of what I'm doing currently. I don't know about you. What are you doing?
So I've actually fallen off of my getting up early a little bit. And that's probably one of the things that as far as like failure goes currently, that's what I'd really like to get back onto, is not sleeping later than I need to. So right now, I'm not getting up late. I'm getting up at 6 a.m., but I want to be getting up at 5 a.m. because that gives me the time. Like you, I was really good about getting up at 5 a.m. and I'd make myself a cup of coffee. I'd take about 15 minutes so that I could sort of wake up, and then I would do treadmill, and then I would usually answer some emails because I try and get like the worst task out of the way the earliest.
Right.
That's just like one of those little hacks, like, hey, tip, if you've got something you really don't want to do it first and get it done. Mm-hmm. So I need to get back on that. But I have also found that there's this thing that they call the snowball effect. And so if you add in just some stupid, tiny, simple habit, and for me, it's guzzling 16 ounces of water as soon as I get out of bed.
Okay, yeah.
That has, for some reason, if I do that in the morning, I feel good about that. And I'm like, it sort of snowballs into other good habits, because that one habit made me feel like I was doing something good for myself. And the reason I think that it really stuck in my head, so I was listening to a podcast. It's called The Model Health Show. It's probably one of the top health podcasts on the market right now.
Okay, yeah.
It's amazing. So we'll make sure we link to that. But he calls it the inner bath. So I learned it from this guy. His name is Sean Stevenson. It's called the inner bath because when you think about it, you haven't drank water all night long, right? And so in the morning when you wake up, your organs are like raisins.
Oh yeah.
Everything needs to be rehydrated, and you're not going to function properly. You're not going to wake up very well if you don't get water into your system. And so that's one of my little habits that I do, and I've been able to be consistent over a long period of time. And by long period of time, I've probably been doing that for 2 years. So I am going to get back to my waking up early. But the guzzling water, taking vitamins is something else that I think people, when they start taking vitamins, for some reason, you feel like you're doing something really good for yourself. Mm-hmm. And it snowballs into better habits, better choices throughout the day. I found that even though like now I know that the vitamins you choose can really, whether they're healthy or not, or whether they work or not, I don't know. But I know that maybe taking vitamins all the time isn't as healthy as we maybe thought it was, or as useful. But when I first started my journey to health, I really felt like I was doing something good for myself, and it kind of helped me keep going. I think it's worth mentioning, and I know you kind of mentioned this in like your morning routine. It sounds like you have things set up to make it easy for you to make the right decision.
It's planned. It's very planned.
Right. It's orchestrated. Yeah. So like I'm assuming that you probably have all of your clothes set out in the
good thing I go to work and I work in a building and I have one uniform I wear every day. Right. So I don't have to think about that.
Nice.
Yeah, so my lack of clothing choice, my wife would yell at me because I literally have like, this is actually a nice shirt. I have like a lot of like cartoon stuff, but I just pick one and just go with it. I don't really care. I mean, yeah, that makes it easy if I don't have to make that decision on what I'm going to wear to work.
Yeah, and I think, for this last point of setting these small and realistic goals that can have that snowball effect and that can keep you going, and can eventually, if done correctly, we're going to talk about habits the next time on the next podcast, but can eventually, if you do those over and over consistently, turn into habits. But it starts, I think, with changing your environment to make those habits easy. So if you start thinking about a habit that you want to form in your life, and for me, if that's getting back on the wagon of getting up early, how do I fix my environment to make that happen? And so for me, I think it's probably going to be putting my alarm clock across the room so that I actually physically have to get out of the bed and turn it off. And
whatever works.
Exactly. I really do believe that if you don't make it easy to make the right choice, you're not going to.
Yeah, totally understand that. Yeah. All right, so I think we kind of covered everything that we wanted to cover today. Is that right?
I think so, and
right.
I am so excited to talk about habit formation the next time we talk, or the next podcast, because understanding human nature and understanding our biology, understanding how habits form in the brain, and being able to work with our biology is gonna help you form those habits. It's gonna make the right choices easy, and that's really gonna be the way to true permanent change.
This is the Initiative Project podcast, and we will see you next time. If you like what you hear, please comment, subscribe, push that like and notification button on YouTube. That would be great. See you next time, guys.